Welcome to Sound Criticism. My name is Michael Beagley, and I'm really happy that you've joined me here today as we embark on this journey together through the world of audio. Sound Criticism is shop talk for the professional audio creative. It works as an educational supplement for aspiring artists, and it's also an entertaining look behind the scenes for enthusiasts who are just curious about how sounds are made. In this show, we'll look closely at a video game or perhaps another piece of media, and we'll try to break down the inner workings of what makes it sound so good. Since this is the first episode, I wanted to take a moment and get some terms out of the way. Feel free to skip ahead to the review portion of the episode if you want, as this intro is a little longer than our other intros will be. So here we go with some terms. When we listen critically, it's important to break down the audio of the whole project into smaller sections. We might hear ambient sounds, for example, like the sound of a forest, or a busy street, or a sports game. Ambience is crucial for immersing the listener into the environment of that game or movie. Our next section is sound effects. Sometimes we hear abstract sound effects, such as this sci-fi door opening, which doesn't exist in the real world, and so the sound designer is tasked with creating the sound effect using a bunch of techniques that we'll learn about. Other sound effects we hear are more natural. Footsteps are a perfect example. Oftentimes a sound designer will record fully, which means that they themselves will walk and record the sound. Or they might squish vegetables in order to get totally gross horror movie sounds. In the movies, there are even professional Foley artists whose sole job is to mimic what's on screen. Next, we have the music of the game. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Everybody knows what music is. But we'll listen closely and try to find unique techniques being used by composers today. Sometimes in a game, and definitely in a movie, we'll have dialogue. Voice actors, dialogue recorders, directors, coaches, and editors all need to work together in order to make dialogue sound good on a project. The last section we're going to talk about is the GUI, the GUI, the graphical user interface. This is a fancy term for all the menus and buttons that may appear in the game. The right button sound, or shimmer, can really make a game come alive. I challenge you to play a cell phone game and try and notice just how important all those button sounds are to your experience. Okay, that's enough about the sections for now. We'll talk more about them as they come up. Let's get started with episode 1. In episode 1, I'm reviewing the game Caveblazers, which is a 2D randomly generated permadeath indie game. The game has done really well in 2017. It has earned a lot of well-deserved praise, and we're going to take a closer listen to how it sounds. And, as an aside, it's really hard. If you like to play difficult games, give Caveblazers a try. It's really hard to play. I was dying so many times even on the introductory levels. I get a chance to sit down with the composer of the music for Caveblazers, Paul Zimmermann, and we had a chat about his process as well as video game music as a whole. So, without further ado, here is our Sound Criticism Episode 1 review of Caveblazers with special guest Paul Zimmermann. Enjoy. So, hello, Paul. Moin moin, and welcome for joining us.
Hello from Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Our audience should know Paul and I have something in common. I used to live in Hamburg, and so Paul's coming from just outside of Hamburg right now. He's calling us from there. So Paul's the composer for Caveblazers. We're really excited to have him here today. I wanted to talk a bit about your history, about how you got into games, Paul. So what are some... you probably studied music for a while. But what are some games that maybe inspired you to get into writing music for video games?
Right, so writing for music, writing for video games was kind of something that evolved naturally for me. I started playing music when I was around 15, and mostly rock and pop then, and always writing music. And for some reason, it never really occurred to me until much later that I could write music for video games. So I've kind of grew into it, and I've always been a gamer or a person that plays video games and enjoys video games. And so it really just came to me one day that, wait a second, I can write for video games. So it kind of evolved naturally. But when we're talking about video game scores or soundtracks that really inspired me, I always have to think of 3 specific ones. The first one would be the score for Monkey Island, or the Monkey Island series by Michael Land. I played that game when I was around, I don't know, like 10, 11, 12. I really loved the game, and the music was amazing. And another would be the soundtrack to Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness, actually, by Glenn Starr. And the third one would always be, I think, Koji Kondo's score for Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Seasons, actually. I mean, all the Zelda games are great, but Oracle of Seasons kind of my personal favorite. Yeah, and all these, I don't know, those are very different soundtracks, but I think they all really have in common that they have great themes, are very memorable, and I guess that's in some kind what I would strive for as well in my music, if it's possible, or if memorable themes are required or fitting in the game.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with a lot of modern video game composition, is much of it is straying away from thematic material, and it's kind of, a lot of people are writing in the style where music meets ambience. Right. And the thing I noticed with what you did with Caveblazers is it kind of, the game has a bit of a retro feel, and so you write themes. Like you write, it's not just a song. It does evolve. It is video game music, but it's very thematic. Did you get to play Breath of the Wild at all, or check it out?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of strange. I listen to a lot of video game music as well, and so I know the music for a lot of games that I haven't played ever. I tend to watch Let's Plays if I'm not able to play the game because I don't have any consoles, or I mean, I'm on a Mac, so I'm kind of sometimes forced to sticking with Let's Plays because I don't really have the system for a lot of video games that come out today.
If that's considered weird, I do the exact same thing. I don't have a Switch yet. I really want a Switch, but I've watched a lot of Let's Plays of it because I wanted to experience, the sound, the music.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I want one. It worked. It's good advertising.
I mean, I have a Game Boy Color.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
It's kind of the only...
You're keeping it modern.
Yeah, and I think I've got a Nintendo DS that I bought in Tokyo, but that's kind of about it at the moment, at least.
Right. Cool.
For me, it's always like when new money comes in, it's always, do I spend it on music and new equipment, or do I buy video games? And it's kind of like, I have to spend it on music. At the moment, at least.
Yeah, when I talk to a lot of programmer friends, programmers who I'm friends with and we work on projects, they don't really understand just how much gear you have to get. I think the artists maybe understand a little bit more because they're always updating their pads, and those are just thousands and thousands. Or like they'll get an iPad Pro or something.
Right,
so
yeah.
the artists maybe, but programmers writing code, you can do it on a lot of machines. So but a lot of them double up with other things. A lot of them are musicians as well, and so they get the gear. But yeah,
There's
you're right.
definitely money to spend, so you always find something you
Right.
need
For
or you
sure.
think you need. So it's
For
always
sure.
expensive. Yeah.
So have you found any games on Mac? Have you played lately? Do you play games lately? Or
yeah,
is it
yeah.
more writing? Okay.
So when I mean, there are more games nowadays for Mac. Like many developers decide to do Mac versions as well, as I think especially in the indie community, because it's kind of like, why won't you? I mean, with Unity, etc., it's pretty easy to do a Mac version as well. And even some of the games that aren't for Mac yet, like Caveblazers, I've managed to play via Wineskin on Mac. So it's possible. And yeah, I try really hard to play most of the games that come out, especially indie games, because I kind of need to be in the scene and kind of want to hear what other people doing.
Yeah. But Let's Plays are the easiest way. That's my opinion. I watch Let's Plays while I'm doing the dishes or something. That's how I keep up with games. I try to play games every week, but sometimes weeks get past me. You're right about the Macintosh thing, though. My girlfriend has a Mac, and we even played BioShock on it. Steam is really good for Mac games. Yeah. We played Portal. We've all the Civ games come out for Mac. Yeah, there's a ton of games out for Mac.
Yeah,
so.
I've just been playing Civ 5, I think. Yeah. So it's possible and it's fun. Works.
I own Civ 6 and it scares me because it's a Civ game and they take up so much time. So
yeah, I've tried to play multiplayer with Civ, and I mean it's fun for some time, but later on when you have like 20 cities and I don't know how many units, it like one player takes around 20 minutes to finish his round, so it's really it kind of gets tedious after a while. But it's fun.
Civ's another great game with regards to sound design. Just the different layers that they use with Civ and all the different sound effects that they do. It's just really, I think that's why I get sucked into the one more turn. If it weren't for the sounds, I feel like I could walk away. If I could play Civ on mute, I don't think I'd play it as long.
Right.
You know? So definitely. Yeah, I hear you though about wanting to play more games, but there's never enough time. But Caveblazers has that retro feel, and I've noticed I've been picking up more modern retro games, if you follow me. Indie games have this kind of Super Nintendo-ish feel, but these games could never appear on Super Nintendo because they're all way too complex. Like Caveblazers, it has, oh gosh, I lost the word. They like randomly generate the maps. The generative process, so like the kind of Spelunky type feel. So yeah, it's a really great time to get into that stuff. So how did you get the gig? Are you friends with the guys from Caveblazers, or how did you find the gig to become the writer for Caveblazers?
Right. So I mean that's kind of like, I guess for many composers, especially when you're starting out, that's kind of the most interesting question I think, like how do you actually get the gig? But honestly, it's not really, there isn't really a special method to it. I found that for me, Twitter is really one of the best sources for me to be updated about new games coming out, being in development. So I actually tend to just scroll through my timeline and see if something pops up, and then I basically just contact the people if I feel like that's a game I'm really interested in and something I could write for. So that's basically what happened with Caveblazers. For some reason, I stumbled upon some images or GIFs, I think. And yeah, it was pretty early in development, I think, at that point. So I felt like maybe they don't have a composer yet, which is always kind of, most of the time they do already have someone. So it's kind of a hit and miss situation. But yeah, I just wrote, it's just one developer. His name is Will Lewis. And I just wrote him and told him, yeah, would love to do something. And he listened to some stuff, wrote for other games, and I prepared some demos for him. And yeah, basically went from there. It was kind of, yeah, well, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, so you found some stuff online. Where was he posting this stuff? Was it on Twitter? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that that was on Twitter. Like, I mean, they use all kinds of hashtags like game dev or indie game. And I just tend to follow mostly only developers on Twitter and artists and just generally people involved in the games industry, just so that I'm able to see what's coming out and kind of like be the first one to find a new interesting game and be the first one to contact them, because I know that developers tend to get a lot of mails, especially from composers. So sometimes it's actually really about being the first one to find the game and contact them.
Right.
And then having some good music, of course, as well. But that initial contact is really sometimes tricky. And yeah, with Caveblazers, it worked out for me. So hey.
Yeah, it worked out really well. And Caveblazers is a really successful game right now. So it's good on you. It's what are some other projects that you've worked on in the past?
One of the first games I worked on was called Trench Run. It was kind of similar to Caveblazers in that it had a 2D kind of retro graphic style, but we decided to go with real instruments. So not go the route where we also do chiptunes or some other lo-fi or nostalgic audio. We went with real instruments recorded. So that was actually kind of like a lot of games I've worked on. They do tend to have 2D graphics and more, I wouldn't say high fidelity audio, but more modern produced audio. But I've also written some chip tunes, and I really love it actually. But it can become quite, I don't know. It feels like the market for it is kind of saturated at the moment. Like a lot of games use that kind of 2D graphics and chiptune approach. So I really tend to want to try to get real instruments and modern production into there as well.
Yeah, and you can always blend. For instance, you use some synthesizers during the boss battles for
exactly,
Caveblazers. Yeah. And that kind of blend, having the chiptune skill set is important. I still write a couple chiptunes, but I barely ever do it. I write a song that's only chiptune. So yeah. I like blending kind of how you've done in the boss battles. So yeah, it's effective. It gives you that feel, but you don't have to get away from it.
Exactly. It kind of like the player is reminded of that sound. It's kind of a bit nostalgic, but if you combine it with new stuff, it's really great. It sounds good.
Well, and it almost gets into like, this is what Wagner would do with like a motif, or this is what Beethoven would do with a variation. This is when you get into this level of composition, you can just insert little chiptunes as if to remind the listener, hey, by the way,
right, yeah.
You're playing a 2D side scroller, you know? So,
yeah.
So. really excited to hear about this. Other than how did you get the gig? This is definitely the second most popular question out there, right? What is your process? Like, I feel like with composers, instead of asking boxers or briefs, we say like, "What's your DAW?" So what's your DAW that you use? What kind of gear that you use? We see one of your microphones for sure, but what's some of your favorite gear that you use, and maybe what's some of the stuff that you used for Caveblazers? You talked about using real instruments versus using samples, so just run us through your process a little bit.
Right. So on Caveblazers, I mean my DAW is Logic on a Mac, and there's really no reason to it other than Logic being the first DAW I really got to use. So it's kind of, I know how to use it, and now I'm staying with it because I'm too lazy to switch and learn something new. Maybe one day, but probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm the same way with Reason. I learned it in college, and I use Pro Tools occasionally, and I use Studio One, also out of Hamburg. Studio One's a good one. But but I tell you, the first one, it's the first one's always the best one, because all the DAWs today are all really good. So you don't lose, you know.
Yeah, I'm not the guy that will go out and tell people you have to use Logic and because it's the best. I'm not kind of like a preacher about it. It's just, it's a tool, so it works for me, and yeah, that's for many things the thing. And for Caveblazers, I've used almost entirely, or I think entirely, I've used sample instruments. I really like the stuff from East West, the orchestral stuff, and I've bought for the more medieval instruments, I've bought the Era Medieval Legends, I think it's called. It's a sample library that specializes in medieval instruments and kind of like European sound, historic sounds. And that's mostly it. For some of the synthesizers, I've used Native Instruments Massive. I really like that one. They have some great sounds, and you can really do a lot with it. And yeah, that's basically it. So it's not really something secret or something totally out of the ordinary. It's just it's just tools. So I mean, I feel like sometimes people get hung up on that question too much. Like always when I see game developers post footage of their games, there's always the question, which engine did you use, which pad or which programming language. It's kind of like people want to know the tools because they think that the tools make the games, but it's like it's the person that uses the tool. So
I totally agree.
It's not so much about the tool, but it's about your knowledge and what you can do with it. Like there are a lot of crappy games that are made on Unity, but there are also totally amazing games made with Unity with like amazing graphics, etc. So it's really not the tool that defines what the output would be.
And there's terrible music made in Logic and in Reason.
Exactly.
And it's just, I hear you. For sure. I'm guilty. I have to ask the question though, because it's shop talk. It's everybody wants to talk about what's your gear, what's under the hood. It's
the next question, I guess, would be like what the actual process would be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've actually tried a lot. I tried around a lot with different processes. Like, do I start in the DAW with a huge template and try out a lot of different instruments? Do I start in Sibelius and write an actual score, etc.? And one thing I now do, and I did for Caveblazers, I'm a really huge fan of piano sketches. So especially for main themes or tracks that will have really important themes or everything, I start on the piano and work out the themes there. Because when I have a huge template in Logic and go in there, I tend to kind of get lost in all the different sounds. So I tend to play around a lot and, now a cello here and I'm putting some drums into here. But it's not really the core of the music. what it's about. So it should be about the harmony and the melody interacting and being, in this case, memorable or thematic. And I found that it's really easier to start on the piano, just work it out. It could be even like a totally crappy sketch. Like the sketches I did for Caveblazers are horrendous. I couldn't show them to anyone. It's just like really crappy piano playing, just block chords in one hand and the melody in the right hand. But when you have that down, it really gets just easier from there, because you know what the melody is and you know what the basic harmony should be. And you can go into your massive template and just think about, okay, what instrument is going to play what. And for me, it's a lot easier to do it that way.
So you separated the melodic and harmonic thematic content writing from the orchestration process. And
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I write thematic stuff, that's what I always try to do. Mussorgsky's one of my favorite composers, and he was primarily a piano sketcher. That's kind of why he's famous. He just did piano sketches, but everybody knows the orchestration is done by Liszt of, for instance, pictures. So there's some really fantastic Mussorgsky orchestral pieces, but really, if you listen to them on piano, you listen to the man's brain at work. You know, and to capture that in video games, especially when you're writing thematic themes. That was redundant. Especially when you're writing thematic material. That's a great way to have the process, because I get lost in the orchestration. Orchestration's overwhelming, you know?
Yeah, because it's like so many possibilities. And when you don't really know, when you have to orchestrate and write the melody and the harmony, etc. I mean, there are probably people that can do it, and sometimes I've done it, but I find that it's much easier when I know what's actually going to be played, and I have more time to actually focus on just the orchestration and the arrangement, etc.
So you played rock and pop also. So it's kind of like, instead of focusing on writing a good chorus, you're mixing in the hi-hat and the bass drum. You know, it's kind of like the mixing is the last for a reason.
It's like a good pop song, a good pop and rock song should work fine on the piano or just the guitar and the singer. It should be so amazing already that all you have to do is just add some drums and bass and some other stuff, and it just enhances it, but it doesn't really defines the whole song. So yeah, that's kind of my approach, I guess.
One of the things I picked up on when I was listening to the music you wrote for Caveblazers is that you do write melodies. You write really solid melodies and harmonies, but you also write really awesome ostinatos. So is that something that you're really into, like the left hand? You know, it's not quite a melody, but just this ostinato, especially during boss battles, it's just really ostinato heavy with the synths. It works. I like that. What's your process for thinking up an ostinato?
Good question. I think that kind of goes back to a more rock approach. Like I feel that's something that Hans Zimmer has done with in film music a lot. He will kind of use the lower string section kind of like a guitar that plays a riff. So the strings don't play long legato notes, but he will have a kind of a riff, and that kind of, I don't know, it really gives, especially during boss battles or more epic, to use that word, tracks, it really gives it that drive, because it's rhythmic, and I don't know, I guess it just sounds awesome.
Yeah, right.
And and that's what I especially on one track from the Caveblazers soundtrack. It's for the level Fungal Grotto. where the player is kind of like in a mushroom infested level, and it's one of the last levels. It gets really hard around there. So I felt like using the lower strings, kind of like almost like you would use a metal guitar, kind of riffing. I felt like what was really appropriate to what the player would feel like in that situation, and it's kind of, but it's orchestral, so it really has that big feeling, epic, heroic feel. It's kind of like a level where it's infested by mushrooms, and it's one of the later levels in the game, so it gets really hard around there, and it's a dark level, like, yeah, not a lot of light. And I felt like using the lower strings, kind of like you would use a rock guitar, like riffing, was really appropriate, because it gave the sound, that kind of grunge you would get from rock or metal, but at the same time also really had that epic or more, yeah, heroic, big feeling. So it kind of felt like there was a good sound for that level especially.
Yeah. Did you get to hear the sound effects before you composed, and did you take the sound effects into mind when you were composing it all?
Yeah, actually, yes. I asked Will, the developer, to, like, when I first came on the project, I asked him to send me gameplay footage, because I usually tend to write to gameplay footage when I start writing. I will actually pull up the video in Logic, so I can actually see the game playing while I write the music. And yeah, the game already had most of the sound effects in it, I think. And it really helps when writing the music, because you kind of have to take it into account what happens sonically as with the sound effects as well. So you kind of don't want to overwhelm the whole audio spectrum by writing that should only be listened to without sound effects. So yes, to make it short, yes, I did take it into account.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. When I try to write music, when the sound effects are already written, I try to make space for like sonic space, whether it's the frequencies or whether it's the actual like the frequencies as far as in mixing, like an EQ. Did you perhaps use any EQs to filter out some stuff where you could maybe hear a sword slash or hear something else?
I think time I really had to take the sound effects into account, or was during the boss battle, or actually at the start of the boss battle. There are short cues that there's a short musical cue for each boss, and those are like 2 seconds long or so. And at the same time that cue plays, there's also other sounds, so I had to take that into account. But other than that, not really. Like, I basically just wrote the music, and mixing wise, I didn't take a lot into account what was happening sound wise. Like, that's also kind of like, Will, the developer, would then mix the music into the game, like he did the implementation basically in Game Maker. So he would adjust audio levels or whatever he needed, so that the whole soundtrack, including the audio, was the sound effects would be okay and sounding good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question, was about
oh yeah, right.
yeah, another gear question. Sorry about that. The obligatory gear questions. So you said he was using GMS. Was this is one of the professors I worked with, she talked about how this is perhaps an asset cannon. So you just shoot out songs over Dropbox or over email or something. Was that how this project was working? I think we've all been there. I think we've all done an asset canon project, and it can really turn out well, like Caveblazers. So
Yeah, basically that was it. Like I don't really have much knowledge with Game Maker Studio, and yeah, basically I just wrote the pieces, and as soon as they were kind of like green lighted, so to speak,
yeah,
I put them in a Dropbox, and Will could drag them into the game and adjust whatever he needed to adjust volume wise. But other than that, yeah, that was basically it. We did try to do some kind of, I wouldn't call it adaptive audio, but during the final boss battle, we have 3 different layers. Because there are three different boss stages. And so I would just export some part of the layer, and Will would then be able to fade that in when the next stage of the boss battle was playing. So, but other than that, I just dropped the pieces into a Dropbox, and he implemented everything.
nice. Did he give you any interesting edits over the process? Anything from the process that you'd like to share?
Like what do you mean? Like for example,
Did you give him a draft of the music and he says, "Ooh, can you change this little part?" Or did he just say,
oh yeah,
okay. Was there anything interesting that pops out?
let's see. Yeah, I always send drafts of the music. I never really just finish a track completely and then send it off. So a track will go drafts and reworks, etc. Because I kind of feel like I need that input from the developer, and it's much easier to fix something early on than write a whole queue and then no, that doesn't really work at all. So I always send draft and versions. And I mean, one thing that mostly popped up was that Will really wanted the soundtrack to be kind of fast and kind of rhythmic. Like, so with Caveblazers, one of my approaches beside the piano sketching was to actually write, I wouldn't say beats, or like write drum tracks first, because Will always really wanted to have that kind of rhythmic backbone to the whole gameplay, I guess, because it's kind of fast paced and it's kind of hectic. And so he really wanted that percussive or rhythmic feel there. So I would write percussive sections first as well sometimes, yeah.
Would you write in a loop? Did you try to come up with, like, you'd have a loop and a grid, and you try to place things kind of like a drum machine, but maybe with different sounds?
Yeah, I think on some tracks I did that, especially on the boss battle. I think I did that, where I would really start with the whole drum backbone and then think about what other things I could add to it. Yeah. So sometimes, yes. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything you would shift? Is there anything, if given the opportunity to redo Caveblazers, is there anything you would try differently, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because I mean, a lot of times you really suffer from, I don't know if it's perfectionism or if it's just not wanting to let go of a specific piece, because you kind of feel like you have to tweak and add and change. One of the things I really like about writing music for clients, like with video game music, because there are deadlines, and at some point you kind of have to decide, okay, that's now it. Because otherwise, when you're just sitting at home and writing music just for yourself, you tend to maybe never even finish something, because you kind of redo and change and think, oh, maybe I should add this here and there. So yes, there are, I think with every project, there's always that kind of feeling, especially afterwards, because you feel like you've learned a lot during the process of doing a project. So afterwards you feel like, damn, if I would start the project now with the knowledge I have now gained during that process, maybe I would do it differently, but then again, it's always the same because you always learn, you always hopefully get better. And there's always that feeling that maybe there's this I could have done better or changed. So I guess yes, but at the same time, I'm also kind of, I'm happy with the result, and I'm happy to say at some point to let go and say, okay, that's now finished. Especially when the developer tells me I really like it and it works for the game, then it really helps me to say, okay, that's basically. I mean, that's my job in essence to write something that the developer wants and really likes, and it's a huge bonus for me when I say I like it as well and I feel like it's great as well. But yeah, so it really helps to have another person telling me, yeah, it's good, or it can really help to have another person telling me, no, Paul, this is total crap. I can't use it at all. And then, yeah, that's another situation. And then I'm happy to do rework as well. So yeah.
I'm looking forward to when I meet my first developer that actually tells me, Michael, it's total crap. I'm waiting because so far I just get like the diplomacy. They say, well, maybe you could just shift the, like, just tell me if it's rubbish, you know?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I can take it. But I hear you. It's hard to give up our pieces. And because we know that a year later, 2 years later, we're going to look back and wince and say, ooh, did I really make that decision? I probably should. But, as one composer to another composer, I really like Caveblazers. I think you did a bang-up job. Really good work. And I especially love that you fought the trope of the tempo increase during the boss battle, and you brought it down.
Right, yeah.
It got it really serious, And I like the kind of the really rhythmic feel. It reminds me there's some really good retro games that might use chiptunes, but like I'm thinking, Batman for NES. There's some really good kind of rhythmic driving side scroller themes, and you need that rhythm. So I'm glad that he told you to do that because you delivered. So it's really quality.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today. Before we go, could you tell our listeners how they can follow you, where they can listen to some more of your music, and where they can check out some of the projects that you're working on?
Right. So my website would be paul-zimmermann.com. Zimmermann with 2 M and 2 N at the end. Kind of like the English folks tend to omit the last N sometimes. Yeah. I've been thinking about changing my name, but then again, probably not. And on Twitter you can find me under PZ_music. I think I'm most active on Twitter actually, so you can follow me there and tweet me your questions, or if you want me to write you some music, ask me, and I will say no. I will say yes. And yeah, you can find me on SoundCloud, but all that info is on my website as well. So that's really the main place you can go to find out anything you need from me or about me.
Yeah, the Zimmermann thing definitely tripped me up. I've met a lot of Zimmermanns in my life. You're the first one with 2 N's, so you got me.
Yeah, that's a German version.
So, cool. All right.
Sorry.
Well, so thank you so much, Paul, for joining us.
Sure, yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Really glad we got to kick things off with a fellow Hamburger. So, yeah, really excited to have you. And everybody, go check out Caveblazers. Go check out Paul. And go listen to some really good quality music for video games. So thanks a lot, Paul, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Michael from the future. I had a lot of fun doing that first interview with Paul. We had a really good time. If you couldn't tell, we were laughing a lot by the end of the episode. So thanks a lot for watching or listening to this Sound Criticism episode 1. Looking forward to doing this podcast, getting episode 2 out there pretty soon. So a couple quick housekeeping things I wanted to do before we leave. Check out paulzimmermann.com. So this is PAUL-ZIMMERMANN.com, and stay up to date on everything that Paul's up to. So that's PAUL-ZIMMERMANN.com. and see what Paul's up to. Also, Paul uses Twitter a lot, so check him out on Twitter. That's twitter.com/PZ_music. So his Twitter handle is @PZ_music. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Caveblazers. Be sure to check out Caveblazers on Steam and on the Humble store. I got it as part of a Humble bundle. So also they have a website that's rupec.com/caveblazers. RUPECK.com/caveblazers. And if you forget it, I just Googled Caveblazers and it came up real quick. So it'll be there in case you forget. But rupec.com/caveblazers. I hope you guys really liked Sound Criticism. So this is still a work in progress. This is episode 1. I kind of like the format. This interview and putting in clips of the actual work itself interspersed. So, we'll figure this out in a couple episodes. I'm going to try to get another episode done in December. So that way we can have 2 going into the new year. And if you guys want to check us out on iTunes and subscribe, and YouTube, and also subscribe and follow us there. And send us your feedback. You can get a hold of us at contact.soundcriticism@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have a suggestion for who to have as a guest, maybe, or maybe a format suggestion, open to anything. This is a learning process for me as well. So thanks a lot for checking out episode 1. Looking forward to showing you guys episode 2, hopefully here in the near future. Thanks, and have a nice day.